started having a dream, and it was like heaven-like. Saw that my mom was coming to me.
At first, when he was telling his dad this dream, it was just kind of like, okay, cool.
But once I got down to
The Matthew, that's when his dad really
hit him like a ton of bricks. He's all, nobody knew about that. Nobody.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God, we see his hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams pop up in this episode. And we also cover things like visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. So glad you're here for episode 189. Talking about dreams. Have any last night? Do you remember your dreams? Try to analyze your dreams. Last night I had one that's so fitting for this particular episode. I'm walking alongside a guy. He's got a big old cowboy hat, and he's kind of a father figure, and he's a very successful business guy, kind of a super boss kind of guy, and he gives me a handful of change, quarters, and nickels and dimes, and I'm going, I didn't do anything. This isn't mine. I try to hand it back. He doesn't take it. It's mine. Translation in this symbolism here. Translation here has to do with change. When we walk alongside the Father or the Son or the Holy Spirit for any length of time, there's going to be change, and we have very little to do with it. It's all spending time with God. In prayer, in what we watch, in what we listen to, in what we read, we spend time with God. There's going to be change, and it's all grace. It's nothing we're doing. He's making it all happen. All we have to do is cooperate. We just say yes to the change. A few years back, we had a blowout on the highway, another example here of change, because we needed a change of a tire, right? And it's nothing we did, again, and call AAA, and who shows up? A guy named Angel. And Angel did all the work, and we just went, that's yes, and it was done. We walk with God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and angels, and we just say yes. So in this episode, it's about change. And Dreams That Change Us is the title, but it's really the one behind the dream or vision in this case, as we talk to Dawn and Jacob.
Hello.
And I think I hear hubby.
Yes.
Yep.
This is Jacob.
And Dawn will tell you that she was praying that Jacob get a little closer to God, that the temperature of his faith would warm up just a bit. And so God, hearing that prayer, and prayer moves the hand of God, and God certainly in total agreement with that prayer, provided Jacob with a dream that kind of woke him up to a few realities that are here. So we'll begin there, and this dream that Jacob had. What changes have you seen in Jacob, Dawn?
A lot, because he did question. I remember many years before his mom had passed, because his parents are very religious. And before that, his parents had kept, asking him to go to church and all that. And he, at one point, kind of got aggravated from the continuous asking and said, I don't believe. And I think that broke all of our hearts in a way, because obviously you want the best for your loved ones and you want them to go to heaven and be with you forever. And then when he had that, you could see when he was telling me the dream, I said, hold on 1 second. And I got a pen and paper and I started making notes of everything that he was telling me, because I was like, I don't want you to ever forget any of these details, because this is too amazing. Because you could just see it in his face as he was telling it.
What's crazy is when most people have a dream, you don't remember it as I remembered it. That's what was so bizarre,
It was so vivid, yeah.
You only remember bits and pieces, not almost detail and the smell. It was just crazy to me, which also made me know that it was legit. It's real. People may think I'm crazy, but until it happens to them, then they'll believe. That's all I have to say.
That's the way it works. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I believe that there's something out there, especially after the dream I had of my mom. That helped me come forward in believing, because before I was kind of skeptical about it, My mom died 8 years ago. When she passed, within probably, a few months?
Mm-hmm.
A few months after her passing, obviously I went to sleep and had started having a dream and saw that my mom was coming to me in the dream. It was like heaven like where like I was in heaven. Kind of foggy and hazy it was up there, you know? And the like breathing in the air, it was like so minty clear air, fresh air. You could feel it when you breathe in.
It's interesting that you remember the smell, that you got a hit
Yeah,
of the aroma. That's interesting.
right.
Not always that doesn't always happen in dreams.
Oh yeah. I know. Out of all my dreams my whole life until this one.
He even said it was like really bright too, though. Like you said, the light.
Oh yeah, it was the clouds that made it bright. It was weird.
Was it and this is one of those things where dream, vision, what is it? Would you say it was more crystal clear and more memorable than most of your dreams in that it's still stuck in your head?
Yeah, most definitely. Especially down to the air and breathing it in. But my mom comes walking towards me, and she was, before she passed, she was kind of heavy set, you know. And when I was seeing her in the dream, she was like healthier looking, a lot healthier looking. And she's like, "Hey, bud," because she used to always call me bud. And as she walked up, Mark, my best friend, he passed away when I was 8 years old. He was with her. And he's like, "What's up, Jake?" Me and my mom started talking. And she said, "I want you to know that I'm always around and I'm there when you need me."
She also told you, sorry, there's like little things that I'm remembering too that he told me about. She also had told you about Sarah was having surgery the next day.
Oh yeah, my sister was having she has a pacemaker, and I guess she was really nervous about it, and she told me to tell Sarah to let her know that everything will be okay, not to worry about it, and that I'll be there at her side to make sure nothing goes wrong.
She said, I'll always take care of my pumpkin. And that's what she used to call her.
Yeah, when my sister was little, she called her, my mom and dad always called her my little pumpkin.
And did you pass on the message?
Yeah, I passed that on to her.
By the way, and just to clarify, you knew there was going to be surgery for your sister, right?
I didn't know.
You did not know that.
I did not know. Because my sister goes in, she has a pacemaker, so my sister goes in. To me, it seems like a simple procedure. They replace the battery and stick it back in. So I guess she was thinking it was nothing big, but it really bothered her about that, I guess.
Okay. So that was news to you that your sister was having surgery?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was, when I called and told her, she told me that I was just telling her this is what Mom said, and I told her everything about my dream.
Well, that had to kind of throw her, the fact that...
Oh my gosh. She's all, I go in a couple days, Jacob, to get my pacemaker replaced with a new one, so that was one of the kickers.
Okay.
But then with my dad, my mom wanted to be cremated, and my dad, he didn't want to cremate her at the end because he wants to be buried with her. So he just had her buried, and she said, "Tell your dad that I'm not upset, but I wish I would have been cremated," because she said that would have been my way of beating cancer.
Finally killing it.
She's all, that was the whole reason. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, having to tell your dad that.
And you did?
Yeah.
She battled with cancer twice, breast cancer.
Yeah, for like 10 years.
Yeah. And it finally did take her at the end.
Yeah.
I said, who's that? There's a little boy hiding behind my mom's leg on the other side of my mom, hiding behind her leg. I was like, who's that? And she's like, "This is Matthew." And I said, "Who's Matthew?" And she said, "That's Mark's brother." And Mark's all, "Yeah, Jake." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, it's Renee's son. She miscarried."
Who's Renee?
My mom's best friend. Mark was my best friend that was with my mom.
Okay.
And Mark says, "Yeah, Jake, So I was like, oh, okay, all right, So after I told my dad about I went to my dad's house after work, after I got off work. My dad started crying after I told him it all. And he said nobody knew Matthew. One of Renee's kids, he only lived for 2 weeks and then passed away, and his name would have been Matthew. But nobody knew about it, not even you guys. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, and
But
that confirmed.
they gave birth to him, but he didn't survive very long.
Yeah, he only lived for 2 weeks. And so that's why my dad was crying, because he was shocked and surprised that I had this dream and I didn't know that Renee had another kid named Matthew, you know? So that confirmed it to me that it was definitely real, which I knew it was real, one of those kind of dreams.
When you saw your buddy, is it Mark? Your buddy was Mark?
Yeah, my buddy Mark, yeah.
And he died how?
He died in a car accident when he was 8 years old as well, and him and his dad died in a head-on car accident.
So when you saw him in heaven, was he 8 years old or now grown?
Yeah, he was 8 years old. Yep, still the same age. But my mom, that's what's weird, is my mom, she was younger and healthier looking.
Right. And that's generally, because your buddy Mark has grown up. It's funny how, God does what God does to kind of, you understand who's who in the game as opposed to, but we do grow up in heaven. By all accounts of people in near-death experiences is that we continue to grow to a certain age, and usually it's around the age of Jesus, 33, and when everybody looks great, everybody in their 30s looks great. Right. That's kind of your peak. Yep. So is that kind of where Mom looked, or did she look that young?
Yeah. She looked healthy and at her peak. Yeah. I guess you could say that.
All that angel food cake stuff. There you go. Slimmed her right down.
And at the end of the dream, in the background, because she said, "Well, we got to go." So when they turned around and started walking back towards the clouds, I can see a ton of silhouettes in the background, like a misty kind of shadowy figures. But I can detect which some of them were. Like my dad's dad died when I was 6 years old, and he was an old man with a hunch on his back. And one of the silhouettes was that silhouette of an old man kind of hunched over, with a hump on his back. So I knew that was my grandpa, and I was like, holy cow. So it's like in the pearly gates, there's a bunch of people waiting there for you, like they say. Then that's kind of like what I saw. It's pretty great.
So what'd that do for your faith, Jacob?
It made me realize and believe it even more now that there is something out there waiting for us. Our family's still there, spiritually, not body physically, obviously, but they're still there waiting. So that made me at peace with dying. Like I'm good. I can go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everyone got surprises on the way. Everybody.
Yeah. It was. And
my sister's surgery, and the boy named Matthew.
Yeah. And that was the craziest part, even from my perspective, is so I took all those notes down. And when then he told me about his talk with his dad, I wish I got to be there, because even I remember you telling me that at first when he was telling his dad this dream, it was just kind of like, okay, cool. That was the type of vibe he was getting from his dad.
Like he was just hearing me out, like, okay, whatever. But once I got down to
the Matthew
and
that's when his dad really
hit him like a ton of bricks.
Yeah. And so when I heard that just, it still brings goosebumps all over my body.
Yep. He's all, nobody knew about that. Nobody.
Now, you said your dad does have faith, right, Jacob?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, strongly.
So, and a lot of those tears, I think, had to do with just seeing his son.
Yeah.
Right? Seeing you.
Oh, yeah.
Where things started clicking for you. And for any parent who sees their child coming a little closer to God is like, ring a bell, man. Any encouragement helps, Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. I'm sure that's what it was. Yeah. On top of that.
Wow. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that? Because behind every man, as they say, is a woman rolling her eyes. And there's And there's Dawn. Look at that. Look at you took good notes. You took very good notes.
I did. Let's see here. Where are I have my notes here. Was it up higher?
Yep, it was.
I think that you pretty much touched on everything. I mean, he even went to, I am saying one thing, he even went to talk about what she was wearing, though, which was the long white pants that almost were like a skirt.
It was like a dress, white blankety pants, I guess you could say.
Yeah, with a white shirt. And he even talked about her hair being kind of curled back in like the 70s, that curl.
She had the curl, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
She looked good. She looked good and healthy, though.
I love it. That is just awesome. What else did you want to tell me, Don? What other things have been happening along the way?
The other big thing that happened, which was to Jacob, and I have the hardest time talking about this, especially with him sitting next to me. So bear with me because there will be tears that are going to be shed here in a moment.
All right, I'm getting my Kleenex, and we're going to pause right about here. And then more with Dawn and Jacob here on Touched by Heaven. First, a quick Patreon shout out this week goes to one of our fine family of Patreon supporters, Gail Webster. Thank you again, Gail. Gail's been with us a long time. We consider her a friend, certainly, Patreon family member, and supports us on a monthly basis through Patreon. And if you'd like to join Gail and others in keeping this all going here at Touched by Heaven, then just come here to episode 189 at touchedbyheaven.net, or you go to patreon.com directly and search for Trapper Jack. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast and supporting what we do. All right, let's get back to Don and Jacob here at Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God.
It's interesting. So my dad's side of the family, very strong faith. Ever since I had known my grandparents, they went to church on Wednesday for, some of their Sunday school stuff and Bible study, and just very strong in the same church until they passed away. My dad is also very religious, but what's interesting is that I was never really taken to church often, but at the same time have always had, the only way I can describe it is a childlike sense of faith, that just knowing that God is there and God is real and that he's there for us. And I don't know how to describe it because I don't go to church all the time, but it's just something that is in my heart.
Yeah, it's there, which is the way we're supposed to approach him, childlike and all that. And he's dad, basically he's dad. And
exactly.
And he provides it all.
So 2 kind of miracles that have happened, and I consider them miracles. So a year and a half ago, my dad was needing a heart transplant, and it was really bad.
In Colorado.
Yeah, he lives in Colorado. He was actually out of the country when his heart started to fail. They didn't think he could make it to the States, but they finally said, you need to get back to the States or you're going to die. So they shipped him off. He doesn't even remember the airplane ride back home. They got him into the hospital, and that's when they said, okay, you need a heart transplant. We're putting you on the list. Now, to me, anytime I've heard of people being on transplant lists, it seems like it takes forever. And we just kept praying and praying that he was going to be able to receive a heart or have some miracle happen. And I hate to say that because to receive a heart, that means somebody else has to die. And that sounds terrible to even say that I'm wishing for that. That's not how it is. But if somebody is going to, and they're going to be amazing and bless somebody with their heart so they can continue living, that's like the greatest gift that somebody could give my father. So anyway, he was in the hospital for about 2 weeks, and he finally was at the point where it was not going well. It didn't look like he was going to make it. And he was pretty much telling us our goodbyes, me and my 2 sisters. The next day he calls and he's in tears. And I thought this was it, like that he was done. And he said, you won't believe it. They found a heart. And so he got his heart and he had the surgery. And I had told my sister, amazingly enough, the way surgeries go nowadays, you're only in the hospital, even with a heart transplant, for about a week and a half afterwards. And so he was going to be released in about a week and a half after the surgery. It was all successful. And I told my sister that I would go, because this was around the time that COVID was happening. Jacob and I decided we're just going to drive. We're not going to take the risk of flying, going through an airport, especially, you know, we have to be super careful with my dad.
And you're going from where to where?
From Arizona to Colorado.
Okay. Which isn't terrible.
No, it's not. Well, it's a
16 hours, man.
Is it? Is it really that far?
Yeah. Well, because it's northern Colorado, so like Fort Collins area.
Okay. I guess I think of those. Wait, doesn't Arizona bump into Colorado, though?
It does.
At the Four Corners? Four
Yeah.
Corners. So I guess that's why I'm thinking it's going to be, but if you're... okay.
Right. You would think that they're
think.
bigger states, so they seem to take forever, and they're just long, drawn out.
It's like driving through Montana, you know, it just takes, it just takes a day.
Yeah.
You know. All right. Okay, so we're driving a long way to go see Dad.
Yeah, so I was going to help my sister kind of get him acclimated to come home. And so we're driving over there. And keep in mind, the reason I say this during COVID is like the peak of it was I think in March or April that we were going. And so everything was shut down. Like you couldn't, even the rest stops were shut down, which made things very interesting on the way there. So long, just drawn out drive. We both were completely exhausted, super hungry, super dehydrated at this point. And we get there and we are sitting at the dinner table about to eat dinner. And I look over because Jacob says, I think I'm going to go lay down. I'm not feeling well. And I look at him and mind you, at the dinner table it's my sister, her husband, and my nephew, 6 or 7 years old. So he says, I'm not feeling too good. I'm going to go lay down. When I look over, he was just completely pale. And I said, are you okay? And he said, yeah. And then he went to kind of like stand up. And right as he went to kind of like put his hands on the table to stand up, he collapsed in his chair, and his eyes, I still remember, and it's like PTSD in a way, his eyes rolling back in his head. And I immediately jumped out of my chair and went to grab his head because he's slouched down and I wanted to keep his airway open. So I grabbed his head and held it, and I massaged his chest with my fist, trying to get him to be alert. And obviously, I mean, everybody was kind of panicking. And I looked at Tyler, who was my sister's husband. I said, call 911. And then my sister helped get Jacob onto the floor. And as soon as she dropped him to the floor, I just remember dropping to my knees and just crying, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell my children that their dad is gone. And so my sister's doing CPR. I mean, chest compressions, you know, blowing in his mouth and everything. And she's feeling for a pulse. And she, after a little bit of doing it,
3 minutes.
About 3 minutes of doing that, she says, Dawn, I can't find his pulse. I think he's gone. And I'm pretty sure it was out loud. I felt like it was out loud. It was so out of body experience at this moment. And I was just on my knees on the ground. And I just said, God, please do not take him from me. I need him. I need him here. His kids need him here.
Yeah, I heard
please.
You yelling in the hall.
Which is weird because he was gone. And
wait, what was in the hall? I missed that.
Oh, he said he could hear me.
I heard her yelling in the hall. She was in the hall yelling.
You were conscious? Where were you?
Well, he wasn't conscious.
No, I remember that, though. She was yelling in the hall.
Well, that's what was weird. So as I'm yelling this, like, do not take him from me. Right after I said that, laying flat on his back, shoots, from the hips straight up and just looks around like, what just happened?
Yeah, what's going on?
He looked so confused. And I think he actually at one moment even said, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then he stood up and I was like, no, sit down.
Keegan's all, I had to do CPR on you for 3 minutes.
He came to like nothing had happened. He was very pale and just sweat pouring down him at that moment. Unfortunately, it felt like the ambulance took forever to get there. And they could see that something was going on in his heart at that moment. So they ended up, after some convincing of my part, to get him to go to the hospital.
Oh, they were going to leave him there?
No, they were wanting him to go, and
Oh.
he was not. He kept saying,
Oh.
I'm fine.
Just walk it off, Jacob. Yeah, just walk it off. I'm fine.
I wasn't thinking clearly.
I
And
think
so finally, he decided he would go after just me begging.
Yeah.
And they said that there was something that happened with his heart, but they didn't know what. They could see on the what do you call it?
EKG,
the EKG.
yeah, which gives you, if you had a heart attack, there's a permanent mark left. When
Right.
someone's had a heart attack.
Right. And so they could see something on there, but they couldn't identify what had happened. They didn't quite know what was going on.
But they found out that the top of my heart barely beats to where the bottom of my heart
has to overcompensate.
Beats real fast to compensate for the top half barely beating.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's been a part of you. You just didn't know it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
They told me when I get back to Arizona to go to a heart specialist and get it checked out.
Yeah. And then that heart specialist said, it's not that big of a deal right now.
Jeez. So, and again, going back to that moment where you're gone, there's no pulse, you seem gone, you got the prayer going, and Jacob, you, at wherever you were, you could hear.
Yeah, I heard Dawn yelling. Yep, and that's when I woke up, and when I stood up, I see her covered in tears walking out saying, "Oh my God, oh my God."
And then when he sat up is when I shot up to my feet.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you were remembering.
Yeah. But or something from a distance. He's recognizing there was, when you're, wherever you were, buddy, you were a ways away, coming back,
Yeah.
But you have no recollection of being anywhere. It's not like you were seeing anything or experiencing anything.
Yeah, and after I woke up, it felt like I took an 8-hour nap, man. I felt so energetic and everything.
Jeez.
He said he was completely, it wasn't scary. Yeah. He said it was peaceful.
I was at peace, yeah.
Yeah.
Not that everybody wants to hear that, but I said I hope that's the way I go when I do pass. It was so comfortable, peaceful.
Yeah.
I was good with it.
So what I always ask people, what's the takeaway in that experience, and what would you say the takeaway is? I'll take your shot at it first, Don. What was your takeaway out of that?
That miracles happen, and he's listening. And I don't think it was Jacob's time to leave, and he knew that. And I was blessed to be able to spend more days with him.
And he wants us to ask. He wants us to ask.
I thank God every day that I still have him here. And it does. It wakes you up at just how grateful I am for him. Every day after experiencing that, I'm like, I could not have him here right now. And so I'm thankful for him every day.
And how fragile life is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You just be happy with every moment that you have with your loved ones.
Glad I was able to come back.
Yeah. And as far as the dream goes, Don, what's your takeaway on that one?
That heaven is real. It exists.
Yep.
And I believe that dream was not just a dream, but was a vision of his mom coming, hopefully to bring him some knowing that it is there.
Yep.
Bring him that faith back.
Yep.
No argument from Jacob, right?
Nope. As long as you believe you'll be all right, or until something like that happens to you, then you'll definitely believe.
And that's why I wanted to do this, as nervous as I was to do it, and to share my experiences and my vulnerability, especially with people. It brings hope. At least it does to me. And peace. My mom actually, we had to stay with my mom while we were waiting to move into our home here. And she was having a bad day. And I said, Mom, you need to listen to this podcast, because if anything, it just brightens your spirits up a little bit. It just brings you a little closer to God in the moment of knowing that miracles are happening every day. They still do.
Did she do it?
She did. And she loved it. And I told her after you had contacted me, and she said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear this. So,
even though I've heard it, I want to hear it this way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. So glad you're with us. Yeah. Thanks very much, Mom. Thanks, Don and Jacob here on Touched by Heaven. And kudos to you, Don. A lot of times when we're hit with stress, we're just in crisis mode. Sometimes the last thing we do is prayer. And that's where you went first, to your knees. And I need him, and his kids need him. And prayer moves the hand of God, and up shoots Jacob. I love it. Back to the dream. Dreams, just one of the tools that God can use in this giant canvas of how God will come for us. Sometimes we're not reading Scripture. Sometimes we're not spending a lot of time in church. Sometimes he approaches us in a dream just to wake us up, something that nobody else knows, something prophetic will wake us up, just part of the arsenal that God has. And again, nothing that we do, we can ask, but God does all the work. We just have to go along. Beautiful. Thank you again, Don and Jacob here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Did I ask you, how'd you find the podcast?
I think it was through the paranormal podcast.
With my buddy, Jim Harold. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I heard you talk about some stories, so then I found your podcast and been listening to it ever since.
Oh, very good. Very good. So, what is your story? Angel encounter, divine intervention, or otherwise? Get a hold of me here at touchedbyheaven.net. And also, thank you again for your support at patreon.com at episode 189 or patreon.com searching for Trapper Jack. Also, thanks for keeping us a 5-star podcast. If you have time to rate and review in your app, we appreciate that very much. Okay? All right. See you next week here at Touched by Heaven. Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.